Hello, everyone. This is Whitney Will from Star Hearth Astrology, and today I'm going to be talking about the sun's time in Pisces. So the sun went into Pisces on February 18th of 2022 in the morning on Friday morning. And the sun's time in Pisces, I think, really represents the end of what I have been thinking of extended Capricorn season. So all of the time that we have spent with so many planets in Capricorn, the Venus retrograde, the Mercury retrograde, the conjunctions with Pluto, kind of been this long, drawn out time that has really honored the Capricornian way of approaching things, which is this kind of approach to things which takes the long view, which is going to take the hard way if that is what is going to be conducive to making things work in the long run. It can transcend its own sensitivities in order to do what it feels is right and what is going to serve. So we've been in the midst of renegotiating so many things in this area with the Venus retrograde and really looking at boundaries and standards in our relationships and our relationships with our own worth and our relationships with things of value, which can be money, it can be how we make money, it can be the work that we do. And so we've been in this long process of reevaluation. And I think when over the course of Aquarius season, when the sun moved into Aquarius, we kind of took a step back outside of ourselves. And we kind of tried to view things from a more objective lens. And as the sun goes into Pisces, we are still on the tail end of this extended Capricornian meditation, but it takes a much different bent. So Pisces season in 2022 is a different kind of Pisces season than we have had for the last several years. And the reason for that is that Jupiter, who is the ruler of Pisces, had spent 2021 mostly in Aquarius and 2020 in Capricorn, which are Saturn's two signs. And when we put Jupiter, this planet of optimism, of expansion, of generosity, of abundance, of trying to make things better, in Saturn signs, what we get is this sense of making the best of a bad situation. But Jupiter cannot kind of fully flourish in his philosophical, spiritually resourced way. But as you see in this chart, Jupiter is now in Pisces. So for 2022, we have a Pisces season with its ruler in its home. And the way that the metaphor I'm kind of using for how we might experience this is kind of resaturation of faith into the sense of the purpose of our lives, which is a lot of what the sun represents. So, right, what Pisces can do is it can weather the outward vicissitudes of life, the ebb and flow of fate with this deeply rooted faith and this inner knowing that we're connected to everything, that we are part of everything. And so ultimately, there is nothing to fear. Everything we lose still belongs to us. Everything we gain, we are borrowing from the collective. And so it can create this kind of inner spiritual equilibrium that is deeply reassuring, even when we're struggling on the surface. So as we enter Pisces season, I'm going to be talking about the major transits through Pisces season and how they kind of build on the theme. And Yeah. And I think what I really want to emphasize is just that there is a part of our chart and a part of our lives that has struggled for the last little bit. And this is a kind of moment where by no means is everything healed or figured out, but we're approaching the problem from a very different way. And so we have different opportunities for really how we're going to move forward. Okay, so on the 18th, the sun moves into Pisces. There we have the sun now in Pisces with Jupiter, with Neptune. On the 23rd, so it's kind of a quiet first almost week of Pisces season where we don't have too many big transits. On the 23rd, what we get is Mercury, and it's going to be a few hours after this. Mercury moves out of the post shadow of its retrograde on the 23rd. So Mercury's retrograde started at around 10 degrees on the 23rd. It's going to move beyond that. And so what we really have is the true close of Mercury retrograde. We kind of leave that stuff behind. And immediately what we have on the day after, on the 24th, it's going to be a pretty abrupt thing. And, in the post shadow, as we get deeper into the post shadow, we should be integrating the truths that we learned. We should have this sense of things are picking up again. We're moving forward again. Things are becoming a little more straightforward. And what happens with Mercury is that as soon as it leaves the post shadow, it forms this square to Uranus. So we get that square to Uranus going exact. And that square was approached at the beginning of the Mercury retrograde, but then Mercury stationed retrograde and backed off of it. So we almost reached a kind of breaking point, a kind of line in the sand, a kind of major shift in our ways of thinking with this square to Uranus. But we said, no, we got to go back. We got to go figure something else out. We forgot something and we need to make sure that we bring it. And so we've left the post shadow. Mercury leaves the post shadow and we hit this square to Uranus. And what that really ends up looking like is we make a hard left. We decide either what we were working on before, we're going to abandon, or we're going to double down on, right? But there's this Uranian way in which we're inspired, we're electrified, we put something into it, and we make a decision that we're not going to be able to easily come back from. Now, obviously, some of us are not going to feel this transit, and that can be for a number of reasons. And it's always hard to make these forecast videos because people are going to experience these transits differently depending on what's happening in their charts, which planets are perfected, kind of what's going on. So, but that one's definitely, I think, one of the big ones of the month because it's so clearly the end of whatever was happening in the Mercury retrograde. Then we're going to move forward for about another week, so quite a bit until March 2nd. And so in between February 24th and March 2nd, what we have is Mercury in between Uranus and Saturn. So we have this kind of week of Mercury just like getting launched out of that square with Uranus, running with whatever the idea is, really making a break for it. And then, right, as it approaches Saturn, slowly coming to terms with, okay, what is this actually going to look like? I had this radical idea. I have this new space of where I want to be. And how do I give it form? And I really love Mercury and Saturn combinations because I think Mercury is one planet that doesn't engage with Saturn, obviously, depending on sign placement and stuff, but doesn't engage with Saturn in necessarily such an oppressive way because Mercury is the finder of ways. And in so many instances, the limitations laid down by Saturn become this delightful puzzle to Mercury, right? Become this kind of like Sudoku dance of life of like, okay, I can't make this fit there, but how can I change the questions that I'm asking? How can I change my technique, right? How can I really lean into my mercurial nature to fill the spaces that are available to me, to discover new forms that I can inhabit that fill the negative space left by Saturn. And so in that sense, right, constriction becomes an opportunity. And so I think, right, when we have a Mercury Saturn conjunction, we're really deep in that process of what is available and how can I trust my genius to find a way. This is also the day of the Pisces new moon. So if I just back this up a few hours, we'll see the moon and the sun conjoined at 12 degrees of Pisces. So, right, and this means a few different things, right? The Mercury Saturn conjunction is going to be kind of not immortalized, obviously, but kind of frozen within the new moon chart in this way that it gives the Mercury Saturn conjunction this kind of longer staying power, staying power. Right. And so it would give the quality of the next 2 weeks this kind of slow planning, this slow figuring out. This is in the sign of Aquarius. It's about envisioning things that have never been. And with the new moon energy kind of capturing it and holding it, we've got something new beginning. And this new moon takes place pretty closely conjunct Jupiter. And so we have the kind of optimism, we have the hopefulness, we have the belief of Jupiter supporting this new beginning, but it also has this foundational connection with Mercury and Saturn. And then it also has Mars and Venus conjunct Pluto. So that aspect doesn't perfect actually until the next day on March 3rd. But really, we've got all of the personal planets, all of these deeply personal placements tied up with outer planets, which means that these larger themes of life are coming home and getting channeled through our personal lives in a way which it can feel like we're engaged in a lot of big themes all at once, because when you have the 7 traditional planets all tangled up like this, what you get is a potent story for every area of your life. And so one way that you can figure out if this is going to affect you more or less is to look at the ruling planet of your chart. So the planet that rules the sign on your ascendant, and then find it in this chart and figure out the story. So for me, as an Aquarius rising, the traditional ruler of Aquarius is Saturn. So I have the kind of Saturn story going now and always. But my Lord of the year through the use of annual perfections is the sun. And so I have, so I would also look at that in this chart. And I'll go into this all more in depth in my Pisces new moon video, which will be released closer to the Pisces new moon. Okay. So we have that Mars and Venus conjoining Pluto. This is the 3rd conjunction of Venus with Pluto. And so kind of signals getting close to the end of her leaving her post shadow, which happens also on March 3rd. Venus leaves her, or actually, I think it happened before. It happened on March 1st, but in my mind, even though she's cleared the degrees, it doesn't really count because her interaction with Pluto was so intimately linked in the story of this retrograde that until she makes that final conjunction with Pluto, I don't really see us as being clear of the post shadow. So Mars and Venus make their second exact, or sorry, no, they make their conjunction with Pluto. So it's a lot of force. But again, this is the new moon. So the lunar energy is deeply internal. It's like a depth charge of something going off inside, but not necessarily like your outer life coming into pieces, because the energy of the lunar month is so low and so intimate in the unconscious. I would spend a lot of time paying attention to your dreams during this period because they could be very potent messengers. Okay, then on the 5th, we've got a lot of things going on. This is a big day. We have the sun forming an exact conjunction with Jupiter. So this is the new beginning of the sun and Jupiter's synodic cycle. The sun conjoins Jupiter one time every year. And so this is the beginning of a new cycle. And for this year, right, the sun is conjoining Jupiter in its home sign, right, can connect with all the beneficence of Jupiter in that space. This is a really beautiful start to a story, right? It's kind of like, it's like a Jupiter new moon in some ways, right? We're learning the story of Jupiter in Pisces, which is going to be part of this year, though Jupiter also spends time in Aries. Then we also have both Venus and Mars entering Aquarius. So you can see them kind of perched right on the edge. They are both going to enter Aquarius on the 5th. And what we get here, come on, where are you? Yeah, so it's going to be quite late in the day. We have them both entering Aquarius, and they both emerge out of Capricorn. What's interesting, so they're going to form their second exact conjunction. Their first one took place on February 16th at almost 17 degrees of Capricorn, and they've been basically in a conjunction from then all the way until March 12th, so about a month. They are forming their second exact conjunction right at 0 degrees of Aquarius, which was the degree of the Great Conjunction back on the winter solstice of December 2020. And what I think about this, right? So in that instance, we had the greater benefic and the greater malefic, Saturn and Jupiter, conjoining on that degree. And I think that brought things together in a social way. Now we have the lesser benefic and the lesser malefic conjoining on that degree. And I think we're going to feel it a lot more personally, a lot more intimately. I think, right, we've got Venus and Mars kind of tying up these loose Capricornian ends. And at this point, when they step into Aquarius, they kind of step into the new world order. And now it becomes less of reconciling with the past and the peace that we need to make with it, and more towards looking towards the future. So this is kind of a big moment as well. On the 9th, switch it back to days. On the 9th, we have Mercury entering Pisces. So let's get deeper into there so we can see it. Mercury enters Pisces on the 9th. And Mercury, so normally I feel kind of devastated about this transit, having Virgo placed with so much emphasis in my chart, because Mercury in Pisces is both in the sign of its detriment and in the sign of its fall. But this year I feel actually very hopeful about it, which is maybe there again, a Jupiter word about this transit. But I feel hopeful because we've just spent so long with Mercury and Saturn signs. And I feel like in my own life, I've spent just so much time wrestling with the hard truths of life and with the limitations and, with how to make finances work and how to make jobs work and how to pay for childcare and healthcare and just wrestling with these really kind of like nitty gritty pieces and feeling caught in capitalism and in just I don't know, there just hasn't been a lot of softness. And I'm excited for Mercury to enter Pisces because I'm excited for the inspiration and creative potential of this placement. Of like, I don't want to think in the box anymore. I've been thinking in the box. I've been trying to reconcile with Saturnian pieces for so long. And this kind of revitalization of creativity coming back. And also, right, of Mercury in its approach to Jupiter. It's this moment of kind of just softening the edges a little bit. Yeah. So I think, right, it in many ways like takes the edge off of things, or at least that's what I'm hoping. And I think we all need a little bit of softness. I think we need that culturally. All right, the thing to watch out for this is that if you're trying to communicate things really clearly, that's difficult. If you're trying to understand things, that's difficult. People say a lot of things that they end up having to renegotiate with Mercury and Pisces because you're kind of following the flow and not necessarily these linear lines. And I always think about with Mercury and the water signs, how light bends in water. So you can't always see things perfectly clearly, and how that is a gift in so many ways, but can also be problematic if you are trying to communicate things that are really clear. So then on the 12th, what we get is Venus and Mars get more than a degree apart. So you can see they're finally a degree apart. And so I'm kind of seeing that separating of that very month-long conjunction. And they kind of go into a different theme at that point. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing there. So I think that's significant. I think kind of the pressure cooker nature of that aspect will light up. And so, right, we've got Mercury into Pisces, we have Venus and Mars separating. It's gentle. And then the next day, on the 13th, we have the exact conjunction of the Sun and Neptune. So we kind of have this like sweetness and this softness that we're coming into, of like just having this like little respite in Pisces. And I think, I think Pisces can be exciting. I don't think it's generally, it's always this kind of this sleepiness. But I think we'll connect to more of like the exciting sweetness of it when we get Venus moving into Pisces during Aries season. Okay, so then about 5 days after that, on the 18th, we have the Virgo full moon that happens at 27 degrees of Virgo. There we go. This full moon, right, will kind of pull us out of that reverie. Will kind of pull us out of that Piscean, letting the lines blur, feeling connected to things, letting things float, and kind of connect us back to that a little bit more Virgoan sense of, okay, what am I going to do about this? How do I organize? Like, what are the action items to get me from here to there? How do I participate in terms of like a task-oriented way in whatever I'm creating, right? How do I kind of come back to the world? What does do all of my feelings about my own connection to the space, how does that translate into my work in the world? And so I think that full moon really kind of puts that in stark relief. And then the next day, we have the exact square of Venus and Uranus. So that happens on the 19th. Venus squares Uranus, right? Venus is picking up speed, obviously, very quickly. So Venus is going to square Uranus and again make this kind of break of like, okay, so if I have to get my hands dirty with Virgo, what is actually worth doing? And I don't want to spend too much time, wasting away and that. Now, Venus at this point is in a tricky position in the zodiac because if you see her, she is in between Mars and Saturn. And traditionally, what that's called is besieged. So she is in between making aspects with each of the malefics. So she's in a tricky spot. So I don't think this is like the easiest time for our relationships, for our money. We're kind of trying to, this is being stuck in between a warrior and a hard place, kind of. And so the Venusian parts of our lives are maybe not doing so well. They are going to get a lot better after Venus conjoins Saturn, and especially when she moves into Pisces in the first week of April. Okay. Then on March 20th, we have the spring equinox and our day of equal light and darkness. Wow, it's already here. And the sun will move into Aries. So that's what I have for you for Pisces season. I am available for readings, for check-ins, for personal work together of how to integrate these things into your chart, into your life, to use as a sounding board, to use as helping you piece together these archetypal energies and how they fit in with you. You can book readings through my website at starheartastrology.com. I also have a bi-weekly, so twice a month, kind of discussion and transit group where we look at all the transits. We talk about how they've been showing up in our lives. We look ahead to the next couple of weeks and practice integrating that information. So that group starts again on March 28th. It will run for 3 months at a time. And so the next session goes from just after the spring equinox until the summer solstice. So I hope some of you will join us, and I wish you a Pisces season that really takes the edge off and soften things up and offers you some rest before a very exciting and very fun Aries season. Okay. Like and subscribe to my channel if this was good for you. Please share it with other people too if you appreciate it. And I will catch you all next time.